Now we have a new contender for what is possibly the hardest landing done in the world, possibly beating that one DC-9 landing that happened in the 70s. Of course, it's time to talk about Delta Airlines Flight 4819, a scheduled flight from Minneapolis to Toronto in Canada, which obviously didn't have a great ending at all. Here is an exclusive video from TMZ showing a CCTV camera. Here is the CRJ-900 coming in for landing. And we see that landing was so hard, it clipped the right wing off, so the airplane caught into fireball because, of course, there's fuel tank in there. What we don't see is that the airplane obviously then flipped around, as we already saw. Upside down, boy, you turn me. In photos like this, and came to a halt on the runway. Today, let's figure out what might have gone wrong on this very landing for this airplane to land so hard to be able to flip over. Let's dive in. It is 11:30 in the morning at the runway 30 right at Minneapolis Airport. We're on board this beautiful CRJ-900 of the registration November 9er Tree 2 X-ray Juliet. With an hour delay, this airplane takes off without any problems at all. Although note, something you can see already is that the weather is quite bad. See, over the past week, the whole north of the US and Canada has been hit with severe snowstorms, which is probably why this plane was delayed in the first place. This 16-year-old airliner flying for Delta Connection, operated by Endeavor Air, takes off from the runway without too much trouble at all to embark on this 1 hour and 30 journey to Canada, where the problem is the weather only gets worse. See, right now we have skipped to this airplane's descent into Toronto Pearson, and we are simulating the weather that the airport was reporting at around 2 p.m., which was the time that the airplane landed. We can see, and the weather isn't good, and especially the winds are really nasty out there. The METAR data that is reported here by the Pearson Airport is a wind in a direction of 270 degrees, speeding up to 28 knots, with gusts up to 35 knots. Very much lots of wind that I would definitely not fly at, probably because a small Cirrus would probably just die in that kind of wind. But let's be real, this is kind of doable weather anyway, which probably fits within the flight envelope with what this airplane is legally able to do, especially because this wind is practically coming from ahead. Here, you can see that down there. It's coming from, but it's practically just headwind, because we're landing at the runway 23. But we can see this airplane is turbulencing. But I reckon the factor of this wind must be what caused this airplane to practically crash land on that runway. Now, something interesting I've seen as well is that at lower throttle, when we descend down into the runway, the anti-icing system of the CRJ starts to lose a bit of grip. Here's a comment by someone on the forum. The CRJ has been known for poorly performing anti-icing systems. It really only works from 75% thrust onwards. That means while descending with low thrust, no anti-icing. The landing clearly shows an approach in icing condition with high vertical speed and no flare whatsoever, shearing the right wing off. There is potential, and take this with a grain of salt, that there might have been some ice buildup on the wings, and we all know about ice, buildup by now. It's very lethal. Doesn't really help the airplane provide a lot of lift anymore. Anyway, we're really struggling. It's almost funny. Coming down into runway 23 indeed. Now here's an ATC recording, which doesn't sound very promising.
4819, I'm now it's 23. 4819, Toronto Tower, wind 270, gust 33, clear to line on rate 23. You might get a slight bump in the glide path. There'll be an aircraft in front of it.
Winds 270, 23, gust 33. That's insane. Either way, clear to land. Runway 23, we're a bit high now. And this is quite weird. I mean, what we see a lot is the wind direction changes a lot here. You can see that here in the airplane. This is kind of a near wind shear. We're operating at a ground speed of 110 knots now. Coming in quite slow, really. Airplane kind of struggles here with the turbulence. Let's try to land here once again, simulating the real weather conditions of Toronto Pearson at the time. Alright, here we are coming in for a landing, and let's prepare to do what is practically no flare at all. It didn't seem like the pilots pulled up to flare. Touching down quite early on the runway here, maybe just after a threshold here on that right main landing gear, trying to crab maybe, and boom, coming in. Now this landing didn't end as badly as the one in real life, but holy smoke. I mean, at least we're the right way up, but we kind of stopped at the quite approximate location that the real airplane stopped, just upside down. My guess it stopped somewhere here, down runway 23, where the runway 15 left here crosses that runway, which isn't a very long distance. I mean, even if the airplane touched down on the threshold, it would only be a stopping distance of 780 meters. What a crazy landing there. Oh yes, it is up to speculation now. What really went wrong? Was there a wind shear? So the airplane lost lift just before landing, just before touchdown, causing it to lose this much altitude? Or did the pilots really not flare enough? Pull up the nose of the airplane? Like, is that a proper pilot error here? Well, we'll have to figure that out. I think the Canadian air crash investigators will have to figure that out. What I find interesting is the ADS-B data here of this airplane coming into runway 23. The last reported vertical speed is 1,000 feet per minute in the minus, of course. Here, 110 knots of ground speed works kind of well here with the wind that were reported. Minus 1,000 feet per minute at this point here above the runway makes me assume that the touchdown rate was maybe kind of that. That is a crash landing. Well, I mean, we saw it there. Although you have to take ADS-B data with a grain of salt. Here is the ADS-B data in Google Earth, and we can even see how much the airplane was, wiggled around here in those winds. Like, that is not a straight line. This is an airliner, not a Cessna. This shouldn't probably look like this. And the airplane icons here kind of show quite well the lack of flare. I can just imagine this airplane just falling down. Now, what I find obviously remarkable about this is that there wasn't any fatalities. No one died on this crash. Interestingly, here is a video of the evacuation.
Come on! Don't take it down! Put that phone away!
Which went semi-well. I mean, people are being judged for taking the luggage here. I like how the flight attendant told the passengers to not record.
Come on! Don't take it down! Put that phone away!
Put that phone away, don't take a video. People were taking their jackets. Okay, jacket makes sense, it's quite cold out, but...
Holy... Oh my fucking god!
Everyone's recording instead of getting away. You know what? I think in the new safety announcement, they should probably mention do not stand nearby the airplane and try to make a viral TikTok video. Because that seems like the norm here. There's like half of the passengers here, 80 people on board, by the way, are just recording this for their TikTok and Instagram. Crazy. I guess there, kudos to the flight attendants and the entire crew for making this a very safe evacuation, as well as to, of course, the emergency responders. How lucky it is that the airplane didn't completely catch fire, burning everyone on board, like what happens on the Sukhoi Superjet when it catches fire. I mean, this airplane had just lost its wing. We can't see any fire at all. This was a very well done evacuation, and that kind of stands for the safety of the CRJ, to be honest. That's honestly remarkable. How did this airplane not end up in a huge fireball? Right now, only one person is in critical condition. 7 have received injuries. That's 8 passengers out of 80 people on board who received injuries. That was a very safe crash. Here's an interesting opinion. Looking at the lack of flare, which there was, I wonder if this was a case of spatial disorientation due to light snow blowing across the runway and giving the pilot flying the impression of being further from touchdown than they actually were. Yes. Bad weather conditions indeed, not only wind, but also visibility. So this will be an interesting air crash investigation. Why did the pilots not flare up, or were not able to flare up? Whenever there is an accident in aviation, we want to make sure that nothing like this happens again. Maybe make auto-land mandatory for certain weather conditions. I don't know if auto-land would have saved it, but that seems more or less like a pilot error to me, unless there might have been a problem with the anti-icing indeed, but I kind of doubt that. That looks like no attempt to pull up. So everybody, prayers go out to the people injured, and I hope they get well soon. And thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys tomorrow as always. Good night. And a special thanks goes out to my members, my supporters, Guns Killer, R27, James Duram, That Dude, Anime Gods of Gaming, Derek, Insider Plane, Nishijitsu Finer, Professional Jamal, Ryland Williams, and New the York. You've got beautiful names.